can hear destiny calling.
In this video, I'm going to show you guys how I built this 3.5-inch Bandel basher. This thing is incredible. Now, when people say, micros fly like a 5-inch, oh, my 3-inch flies like a 5-inch, this thing literally flies like a 5-inch. And you put a heavy battery on there, and you can whip this thing around and throw all that weight around. It's pretty sick. And, I'm going to share with you guys some tips and tricks, and I'm going to have this STL file and this STL file. I'm going to have a bunch of STL files down the link below. If you guys are interested and you want to build your own, I'm going to go over the parts that I use. And yeah, this video is going to be a little bit longer, so let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it. I thought this frame was unique for a couple reasons. For one, they have one back standoff. Pirate used torque screws. Torque screws, you're not going to strip out as many screws as you would if they were Allen wrench, I'll tell you. Now this frame holds 20 by 20 stack. There's no really other option. This frame isn't a true X frame. And what I mean by that is if you look from this arm to this arm, they're not directly in line with each other. So it's not a true X. It's more of like a dead cat. So it looks to me like the props aren't going to be in view if you look at it like that. So that's pretty cool. You might see some props, but I don't think you will. Now, Pirate Frame has some 3D printed parts in Thingiverse that you can 3D print. I have already remixed this front bumper. I kind of made it fit just a little bit better. Not to say that this didn't fit good, but I just kind of felt like it kept splitting. And maybe it was just me 3D printing. I'm not really good at 3D printing yet. On the subject of 3D prints, I made some motor guards specifically for the motors I'm about to use. I'll show you guys in a second. I made some of these motor guards for this frame. And I also remixed this TPU antenna holder for the 03 DJI because it didn't seem like they had one for it. They also have this print, and this is for the DJI 03. Pretty much just sits on these back standoffs, and it holds your 03 in the back just like that. I thought that was pretty cool. Or you could just secure it down right here. They got holes for the Vista or other video systems that you like. I chose to go with the Goku F7 stack. This is a 40 amp stack. And the stuff that this thing comes with is amazing. These new age flight controllers, they have all plugs on them. So if you're that type where you don't like soldering that much, this is probably the stack for you. Now this is only $10 more than the Speedy Bee 35 amp stack. And the Speedy Bee stack, you do a little bit more soldering. But in this case, you spend an extra $10 and you can get all these plugs for your receiver, your GPS, your digital VTX, all that stuff. So I decided to go with this here. We're also going to be using the DJI 03 air unit, of course. I want to say this is a GEP RC, and I've had good luck with these. So this is the ELRS version right here. Get good range with that. And I decided to give these a shot. These are the Pacer 1604 2850 kV. So these are going to be 6S. So these are 9x9 as well. So this frame here, it holds 9x9 and 12x12. I thought that was pretty neat. It's kind of weird how they made the option to hold 9x9 and 12x12 on the arms, but they only went with a 20x20 stack. I thought that was kind of weird. But either way, we went with a 20x20 stack. So one more thing. I think I'm going to throw these on the arms. I like these newbie drone lights. And it's going to act as like a race wire type deal where if you break a motor or you damage a motor, you can just unsolder it right here and slap a new one on. I thought that was a neat option. So what you get in this Goku stack here, You get an XT60 and it's a good one at that. This is a really nice one. I'm not going to use this. I'm going to go XT30 because all my batteries are XT30. So we'll set that aside. But I think that's a cool option. We got our capacitor here and a bunch of different screws, probably for the stack. So this is a 35 volt, 470 UF. Comes with all the different plugs that you would need. Your ESC to your flight controller. You got your ELRS receiver plugs. You got your GPS plugs, anything you would need. And Flywheel really did a nice job with their manual as well. Very nice. I like to see more manufacturers doing this instead of, just leaving it online for you to go look up. We got to get our stack screws in. Another neat option with this is you can access the stack screws from the bottom here without having to mess with this bottom plate. You can also take out one of these arms if you were to break one, God forbid. It's only two hex screws. And these arms are also 4 millimeters thick, so I thought that was a neat touch. Normally with these micro arms, they're like really thin, like 3 millimeters at the most. We gotta get our 2 millimeter. This is the only time we're gonna be using this other than putting the motors on because we got this Torx bit. We're gonna start with this ESC. I got the plastic bolts holding the flight controller screws in because we gotta clear these metal nuts right here. So this plastic ESC plug will go into the flight controller. And we don't want that touching. So we're going to start with soldering on our XT30. And for that, we're going to need some cables. And I got myself an XT30. So first step is I got to cut these ends, tin them up, and then these look like they're already pre-tinned, so I'm good on that. And just want to check this out real quick before I do any soldering. So this just slides over the standoffs. No need to even screw it down. And that ain't going nowhere. That's solid. Alright, so now we gotta figure out where our wires are gonna go. They could just come out the back here, I guess. They lay in between those there. There should be plenty of room. So now I gotta see where my capacitor. Where's the room for that now? This is always the issue with these smaller quads when you build these. There's never any room. What I like to do is rip off like a decent amount of solder. That way I can kind of hold it. We've got a couple different options when it comes to flux. You can use the flux pen. You can use the paste. Whichever you prefer. But you always want to use flux. But I already pre-tinned these. Not too bad. This is how you guys want your solder. You want it to be nice and shiny. You don't want it looking dull because you'll get bad connections and bad electricity flow. So I could probably swap this out afterwards. I'm not going to worry about this right now. But what I am going to do, I'm going to be getting these. I'm going to start with the motors. So I'm going to get these LEDs all tinned up. And like I showed you guys in the beginning, I'm using these Pacer 1604 2850 kV. These are 6S. So I'm going to have to cut these wires down a little bit. A lot of it, actually. It comes with some decent wire. So let's do that. Let's tin this up. Typically, I just wipe it a little bit, get some flux on there. You don't need to go too crazy with it. Make sure you got it all over the pad though. Make sure it's nice. That way the solder sticks. If you put too much flux, if you use the paste or the, I think I have some around here somewhere, the TBS black sheep flux, it comes in like that little injector tube or whatnot. You use too much of it, it just gets all over the place. It's really messy. I try to stay away from that, but all you need is just a little bit to get on there nice and clean. And we'll go ahead and just tin these up. Let me just move this. Amazing what flux will do for you. Just makes the solder flow so nicely. Just want a nice little blob, that way the wire will set right into it. Make sure you take a big old whiff of this solder. No, I'm just kidding. Try not to breathe this stuff in. Not good for you. Now that we got these all tinned up nicely, see how they're all the same height and stuff? This took me about a year to master this anyways, and this isn't even perfect. That's why if you get these boards and you practice on these, these are a huge help. I went through a bunch of those when I was first starting. What we're going to want to do now is get the frame back in here. I want to place this where I think this is going to be. And then I'm going to want to cut my wires. So typically, this is probably the smallest frame I'd use these on. So I'm probably going to just run them right up to the edge of this right here, just to give myself some wire. I don't want to be cutting these things up too close to here because these wires attached to like these 3 pins right here, so you don't want to get involved with that. You want to leave yourself some room. What we're going to do here is get some scissors. Alright, so I'm just going to cut these right in the middle. So you kind of want it to look like this. So you want just enough wire to strip off, and you're going to solder it right onto that like that. So I'm going to get one done for you guys, and then I'll fast forward through this. We'll get all these LEDs on, and I got to get some wires to go to the ESC as well. So I'll probably end up using some of this scrap wire, and we'll cut some links to go to this here, just like this. So we want to strip some of this back. With this smaller gauge wire, I typically use my fingernails just to kind of rip the insulation off. So that's what you're looking at there. We're going to tin these up, and then we'll just solder them right on. Pretty easy. Get some flux on these wires here. Hear that flux sizzling. Okay, that's what we want there. Okay, I got all 4 LEDs wired up, or soldered up, I mean. Now we want to take some of this excess wire that T-Motor gives you, and we'll cut little strips. That way we can run these LED lights to the actual ESC and get them hooked up. So that's typically what you want right there. So I'm going to get all 3 wires on these other motors here, and I'll be right back. So T-Motor gives you some screws. Let's see which size works best for us. Just going to put these on snug for now. That way I know where to solder up these wires. Before we do solder the wires to the ESC though, we're going to want to stick down these LEDs because it's going to be hard to do that after we solder the wires. So we'll go ahead and put some sticky pad on these, and we'll stick this to the arm of the frame. Come on now. There we go. Press it in there nice. These things are going to look so cool. I usually start with the outsides and work my way in. We got all 4 motors wired up to the ESC. Probably not the prettiest, but it's wired up. And the next step we want to do here, we're going to have to do something with all these ugly wires hanging off. We're going to have to tuck them in, but now we want to get our ESC to our flight controller connector here. Make sure the pins are going the right way. Make sure it's in nice and snug. So if you take out the little diagram that they give you with this flight controller, we can see where our receiver is supposed to go and which connector we're supposed to use. So it's looking like this is going to be our DJI O3 plug here. And you want to just verify that so it's red, black, gray, white. And we're not going to need these other 2 wires, so we'll have to take them out. So this connector underneath this here, this connector right here, is this one right there. and it's saying it's 10 volt ground TX3, RX3, ground RX1. So we don't need ground in RX1. We just want these 4 wires, because we're not running the DJI controller. We don't want that to interfere with anything. So what we're going to want to do is pop these 2 off. That way it doesn't mess with us. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab this tool. I'm just going to pry up on this little plastic piece and then pull the wire out. Just like that. Same thing on the other side. We no longer need those. All we want is the 10 volt, the ground, RX3, TX3. That's all we want. This black side is going to go to the O3, and this white side is going to go to the flight controller. Just like this. Okay, now we want to find our receiver. We're using ELRS. So let's see which one we're going to use here. Probably one of those. It looks like this is for an analog camera. It's got 5 volt ground and cam. And this left side here, this is TX2, RX2, 4.5 volt and ground. So this to me looks like a receiver. I can use this as a receiver plug, ELRS. It's pretty cool. They got these little clips on top, so it holds on to the little thing on the top here. Thought that's pretty cool. Clips right in just like that. Alright, so we're going to wire this up to our receiver here. We're going to solder this up to the TX2. Let's see here. Okay, so we just got to assemble this thing. We've got a few extra plugs. We can hang on to these for future builds. The flight controller. Okay. Now we're just going to put this thing down. Make sure everything's positioned. Okay. Let's get our flight controller on here. what I'm going to do is take a little bit of sticky tape, and once I get this receiver in this little case, I'm going to stick it right to the frame, and that should hold it pretty good there. Okay, so I got this in its little case. So I came up with the idea of sticking this receiver right here because I wanted my antenna and the receiver to kind of be exposed, and when you're flying, you kind of, this thing's going to be above you anyway, so you're always going to get good reception from the back. I figured this would be a good spot to put it. Worst case, I can do a little zip tie, but I think this ain't going to go anywhere. Actually, I'll probably just use these little press nuts I printed up. Quad Mula does this, and it's such a great idea. Just press these bad boys right on there, and it holds them. You know, it ain't going nowhere. Next step, I remixed this especially for the 03 antenna, the stock antenna. The hole is quite small in there, so you might want to just slide one piece in at a time. It'll fit. Just like that. Slide this in, nice and tight fit. You can turn it if you'd like. Just like that. And this is going to sit right on this back standoff back here. But first, we got to get this hooked up to the actual air unit. We got to hook this up, and then we'll slide these pieces on as one. Before you go and press these down, make sure it's actually on there. That way you're not bending the brass. Okay, we're good. Alright, we got to get a little caddy for the 03 here. We got to get this in. I noticed this print, it had these little nubbies on the top, and the frame, the top plate wouldn't fit over it for some reason. I don't know if this thing's supposed to be upside down or what, but. So there is a little channel underneath this thing that the wire can run underneath. I'm going to see if this is going to be long enough for it. So like this. Alright, so we made it this far. Things feeling pretty heavy, and we still don't have the top plate on it yet. Alright, we got it snapped on. Worst case, we'll stick it to the bottom of the arm and we'll just be landing on it, right? That's not too bad. It's not even going to touch, really. I ended up cutting this off the end of the wires instead of having them come out the side here where I originally thought, or coming out the front. I think I'm just going to have them come out the back here, because I put a battery on here in the center of gravity. With the battery, it doesn't sit far back, so I think I'm just going to go with this. And I also got this this pretty cool print that Pirate gives you in I think it's Thingiverse. Kind of like a battery stopper or a battery eject thing, so your battery doesn't go flying off. But anyways, I'm going to do this a little bit better. I'm going to put this on instead. This is what I originally planned on, but for some reason I did this. I don't know why, but I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of that. And this is going to be nice and clean. I'm going to set this thing on the back here like this. Something at least to that effect there. So I'm thinking something like this. But that's where it's going now. So I'm just going to cut some of this insulation off the wire here. I only want to cut a little bit off. So I want to get this kind of where it's going to be. Might even just throw a screw in. Okay. So positive is the flat side of the XT30. You definitely don't want to mess that up. This is going to be tricky, so let's just hope it plugs in still. I don't think it's gonna. I fucked up. I should have had this plugged in before I soldered it on. So make sure you guys don't do what I did. Learn from my mistakes, let me tell you. Because now I gotta reheat this thing up just to bend these pins back. They're bent now. Let's see if I can't bend it back a little bit. That's a tight fit right there. But now that I have this in, once I heat this up again, it should fix it. Now I'm going to solder the capacitor to the actual positive and negative. think we got it. I think we got it. So we got the positive on the positive, and the capacitor, you see that gray strip right there, that's negative, so that's on the negative side. Let's see if this will come off. Nice. Since I was able to plug that in, now it's a nice and tight fit. Now it's back to normal. So make sure when you do your XT30 or XT60, stick something in there first before you solder the wires on it. That way you don't end up with bent pins like I did. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. That was part one of a 3-part series. I'm going to have 2 more videos coming out on this drone. That was the build series, obviously. And I'm going to have the configuration coming up next, and we're going to have a flight video after that. So if you guys want to stick around and see that, stay tuned. Keep those props spinning.